Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Club of Hamburg. We have tonight an interview with Ben Wolfmeier. Ben is a spokesperson for Republicans overseas Germany. He's been there since 2018. And we really thank you for joining us to give us a perspective on what the Republicans stand for, how you feel about it all. So I'll ask you a series of questions and we'll have a dialogue. And then I would say that it would be good if everybody keeps themselves on mute. And if you know how to use the chat, you can put a question into the chat and I'll see it. If you don't know how to work the chat, then just raise your hand and I'll see you when we get to questions. I'll interview Ben for about 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll open up to questions. Okay? So, Ben, thanks so much for being here with us. I'll just tell a little bit of your background. Your mother was born in New York, so you're sort of an honorary American in that sense. But you live in Berlin, and you've been involved here with Republicans overseas. I understand that your mother used to be involved with Democrats abroad,
right? And
you were considered yourself a Democrat, even though you're not, as a German, you don't have the voting right, but you still follow the politics, and you represent now the Republican cause. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about when you switched from being Democrat to Republican.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a member of the Democrats abroad till 2010, and then the party left me, and so I switched. The party under President Obama turned very left, and I couldn't follow that on many issues, and I was very skeptical of Obama as candidate from the beginning. I thought his no experience, especially for foreign policy, would be very bad. But I hadn't thought at that time that somebody could be worse as George W. Bush, in my opinion. But it was possible. So yeah, and so I left the party, and it's the same year as Donald Trump did.
Now, when you changed to, you obviously switched to Republicans before Trump came in. So please tell us about do you support the party? Do you support Trump as well, or just the party?
At first, of course, it was the party, and most issues I shared and liked. Yeah, at the beginning of the primary season, 2015, 2016, I was a big supporter of Carly Fiorina, another outsider, not politician or not typical politician. And yeah, but she lost. And after that, I was behind Donald Trump. I was a little bit skeptical in the beginning. I don't know, but yeah, I'm 100% behind him now, and I'm very surprised how much he delivered to all his supporters, I think, and for me, he is the most successful president since JFK.
Before we get on to Trump, you mentioned Carly Fiorina. So were you following her when she was with Hewlett Packard, or did you sort of discover her during the debates?
Yes. I know her a long time, since the 90s, and her book was very impressive for me, and I like her style to lead. Yeah, I like that very much. So I thought it would be a very good leader for the free world, and especially for the country. And yeah.
And now back to Trump. Now you said you jumped from Fiorina to then supporting Trump. What was it that attracted you to Donald Trump? What was his policies, or his? Tell me, what was the reason for that?
After the primary was over, it was clear to stand behind the candidate. I'm not a fan of revolting against their own candidate, so give him a chance. And I was a little bit skeptical because he came from the left like I did. And I thought a little bit, maybe he is a puppet of the Clintons. That was what I was afraid of. But yeah, he did a very, very good job so far. And yeah, of course, it's the issues, especially the economy. That's very important for me. Because most of my friends were hurting of the economy under Bush and Obama very much. And so this is the most important issue, but also the foreign policy. So it affects us all. So it's had an impact for all of us. So these two issues were the most important for me.
And you said that you also felt that Trump delivered well. What did he actually, for you, what did he deliver on?
Look, the economy before Corona came was the strongest since 50 years. And the unemployment on historic low. And so the numbers speak for itself. Yeah? Historic numbers for African Americans, Hispanics, women, and disabled persons. So you can discuss it away, I think. And under Obama, it was the worst recovery after a recession ever. Yeah, so it was not his fault, the recession. That was by Bush, but he didn't change it really for the normal people. For the rich, it was better during the Obama years, but not for the middle class and for the poor people. And yeah, that's it.
Usually it takes, when a new president comes in, it takes at least a year or two that they're still riding the wave of the previous one. Obviously, when Obama came in, it took him that period of time. He did turn around the economy, and it did go for many years, continually upward. And Trump did inherit that, or do you not see it that way?
Yes and no. Of course, maybe the first year or the first 2 years have the impact of the person before in office. But if you are in the office, you own the numbers, okay? And it's getting stronger every year. So the third year of Trump and the fourth year till Corona came in was the strongest. So it has nothing to do with Obama that the economy is that strong. Definitely not.
And how do you think the president is owning the 30% drop in the second quarter GDP?
Sure, it's also happened under his hands, but Corona is very special. It has nothing to do with economy failures nationally. Every country has the same problems with that. So, but you see the numbers coming back again, very strong, much stronger as the expert expected. Unemployment is after 3 months down from 15% to 8%. And the third quarter will be very strong, so we will be back again.
And how do you feel, now changing topics to the Corona crisis, how do you feel that Trump has confronted the crisis and handled it?
Nobody was prepared for this crisis, and everybody made mistakes. But I think overall he did a good job. The testing was very low and very slow in the beginning. I agree with that. But in June, it was up very much. And now we are at over 1 million tests every day. So that took a little bit too long. But okay, nobody is perfect. But especially for the social stuff, so the money he gave for the families and all this stuff, he acting very good. And we should forget most of the things to decide are more by the governors. So he couldn't make a lockdown nationally. That must do the governors state by state. And so it's very unfair to say he handled it bad alone. So if it's bad, then it's bad by everyone. But I don't think that the US stands very bad. If you compare it to Europe, the US is in a much better position as Europe is. Yeah? So only 4 or 5 countries of Europe have more cases, have more death cases, and so there's nothing to be ashamed of.
The figures alone of 200, as we're approaching 200,000 deaths in the United States, compared to say Germany's, which is still under 10,000.
But you
it's
can't
quite a discrepancy.
You can't compare one country in Europe with the US. That's not possible. So,
well, it's still 200,000 deaths compared to almost 1 million worldwide, which is so roughly 20%. And yet the US is 4% of the world's population. That's quite a high ratio.
Don't say the number is low. It's high, of course. But if you are testing, you will get higher numbers. And if you open up the country, you get higher numbers. The numbers of cases is not the problem. The only thing what would be problematic if the death cases would go up, and that's not the case. Europe as whole is in a much worse situation. Not Germany. Germany is looking really, really good. Probably one of the best countries in the world. But I think, yeah, it was a little bit luck for Germany, and good handled by the government too. But if you look at Italy, Great Britain, France, Spain, it's much, much worse.
And how do you feel about the politicization of mask wearing? In fact, just yesterday when he held his rally in Nevada, indoors, against even their own policies that the White House has put out, and with no social distancing. They said that they only wore masks just behind where the camera was, just for the camera view, but the event didn't have that. How do you square that, this type of behavior towards mask wearing?
I'm not a fan of the mask because I'm not convinced that it's really working. If you look at the Netherlands, nobody is wearing a mask there, and the cases are not very bad. So I think this is very polarized, but I think everybody should decide by his own. If you feel comfortable to wear a mask, do it. You're welcome, but don't tell me to do it the same way.
Oh, okay, I see. Now the West is burning, and Trump has, famously pulled out of the Paris climate accords, and pretty much the whole party is denying climate change. Do you also feel? Do you subscribe to this viewpoint as well?
I think there is climate change. There always was climate change, but I think it's much overrated. So the Democrats have the same arguments like Al Gore did 20 years ago, and nothing of that what Al Gore proposed happened. And so I think you shouldn't overreact to this issue. And I don't think that the fires have to do with climate change. So no, you have them always, every year, and no, I don't see that.
Well, this year the fires have burned twice the size of the state of Schleswig-Holstein. So it's an incredible amount.
Sure.
Do you attribute that as the president does to forest management or mismanagement?
Yeah, I think that was not a very clever answer by him. I don't think it's the forest management, and I don't think it's a climate change. It's a normal process. So yeah, that's what I see it. And yeah, of course, the other side is overreacting with that. It's okay. We have an election. Let's do them. But no, it's not really.
Now, on a personal note, I know that you're an openly gay man. Tell me how you feel about the party or Trump's handling of LGBTQ policy.
Yeah, that was one of my most skeptical thinking when I changed the parties, and I was very surprised how friendly I was taken over, and I never had a problem with that. I was in very different states, very conservatives and not so conservative, so I never had a problem with people with that issue. And so Trump is not anti-gay or what. kind of saying some Democrats doing. He had more gay ambassador and especially Germany. And he was the first presidential candidate to speak to the LGBT community at the convention. And Obama wasn't very gay friendly, so I know that one lesbian was thrown out of his campaign in 2008 because of that. He changed very late in 2014. Suddenly he became a very big friend. After all the decisions were made, all the votes were made for the states in North Carolina and so on, he never took a voice for the LGBT in the states. But after the Supreme Court nailed it, he was a big fan. So, and he's saying his daughter changed his mind. Okay, he's welcome to that. But no, Donald Trump is very gay friendly and never said something bad about gays. So I have no problem with that. I feel very comfortable in the party and with him.
Yeah. As far as foreign policy, how do you view his? How do you feel about his threats to leave NATO, to not support the allies, to support more friends that have not so democratic practices? How do you feel about the foreign policy of the president?
Yeah, he never said to leave the NATO. He only wants that the NATO pay the money. Obama was doing that too, but he did it on a more gentleman way. Donald Trump is very direct, and yeah, so it's another kind of speaking about it, but it's the same issue. And I think, especially for the foreign policy alone, he should be re-elected. If you look at the Middle East, what happened yesterday, the peace agreement with Israel or North Korea, it's really, really good stuff and makes the world much more peaceful. And if Hillary would have won, we would be in more wars, 2 or 3. So I'm very glad when it comes down to this issue that he's president.
Okay, I think I'll open up the floor to some questions. Annalie, are you want to unmute? You have a question here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. So I was wondering, when you were talking about the economy, honestly, it feels a lot like this is a typical sort of thing that comes from the Trump camp, is that the positive upticks are attributed immediately to him, whereas the negatives are downplayed and sort of, pushed to external factors or maybe to some previous presidency or other effects. And I was just wondering honestly wondering how that works.
I don't know what you complain about. So look, it was the lowest unemployment rate since 50 years till Corona. The lowest unemployment rate ever for women, for African Americans, for Hispanics and disabled persons. Mm-hmm. So a lot of records in the economy standards. He built more jobs in 2.5 years as Biden did in 8 years. So I can't understand that point.
I'm not complaining about that per se.
Okay.
I'm just wondering about the perspective. So like I said, I feel like a lot of the positives are attributed immediately to his actions and his presidency, whereas like you said earlier, a negative downturn in the GDP is definitely due to external factors and has nothing to do with the presidency. So that's just a little point that I noticed and had wanted to make.
Okay, sure. You're welcome.
Okay, let me now switch to Karen. Karen Murray, you can unmute yourself. Would you like to ask a question?
Hello, Mr. Wolfmeier.
Hello, Karen Murray. You're welcome.
Well, I wrote this in the chat, so I guess I have a threefold question. I'd like to know what you have to say about Trump's treatment of race relations, And second, the environment, climate change. There seems to be a gross disregard for environmental protection. And third, his handling of COVID.
Okay. So I don't want to add much more to the climate change stuff. Your first question was about?
She might have come in after you had handled that question. But the first one's about race relations.
Oh, race relations. Yeah, the Democrats try to paint him as racist. That's stupid. He did so much for the African American community, not only on the economy point. If you look for the college, for the black college, or the justice reform. So yeah, so he always was a big friend of the African American community and very popular with them. And as long as he was a Democrat, he was a hero. And now he's a Republican, he's a racist. That's a typical ball of game by the Democrats. Every Republican is a racist, is anti-gay, and is stupid, something like that. But there's no Republican who is less racist as Donald Trump. So he's a big, big friend of this community, and you will be surprised about the support of the African Americans for Donald Trump this election.
Excuse me, but he doesn't come out and say anything publicly.
Sure.
He doesn't make any public efforts to calm the situation.
What situation do you mean? Do you mean the Black Lives Matter protests? Even most African Americans don't like these protests. It's firing back very hard now, the Democrats. The Hispanic voters don't like that, and most African American voters don't like that either. So, come on, we had an African American president. So the Black Lives Matter are supported by the Antifa, and they try to make a revolution of the system. It's not about racism or something like that. It's only about to make violence against the system. And if you think he should support that, that won't happen. But he very often speaks to the African American community. And he always found very good words to come together and all the stuff. But Black Lives Matter is definitely not the right way to do so.
Well, I'm not talking about violent gun-carrying protests in the streets. I'm just talking about the absence of any rhetoric from him to try to bring people together. It seems that he thrives on division, and at many of his rallies and many of his supporters are blatant racists. They're proud racists. And, you know, I remember when John McCain was at a town hall meeting when he was running for president, and someone of his supporters said something ridiculous about Obama, and he interrupted her right then and there. And I don't see any of that from Trump.
Oh, that's not true. Especially after the George Floyd stuff, he found the right words, I think, and no, that's not true. And at his rallies, I never saw some racist stuff happen there. He always speaks there about the African Americans, and the people are on fire to help them out of the dig where they were for 30, 40 years, held by the Democrats, by the way. But that's really unfair to say he say no words about it. And of course, there are some Republicans who may be racist, especially in the South. Of course, there will be someone. But I will say 90% of the party is not racist. And look, the first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves. Yeah, so the Democrats are the party of racism. They are the party of Kikiki. They are the party of the slaves. They are the party of the South. So without John F. Kennedy, they probably would be there still. So don't talk to me that most Republicans are racist or his supporters, especially the Trump supporters, the Trump fans, his base in the party is not racist. That's not true.
Well, we're not going to get anywhere with this, but I would like you to please cite for us some public speech that he has made to try to calm the fires of racism that seem to be raging again in the United States. And also, people waited and waited after the George Floyd incident for him to come out and say something. And you said he did, but could you please maybe direct us to a source so we could watch that?
Look for the speech after the Floyd stuff happened. Look for a speech about that. You find it on YouTube and everywhere. And in most his speeches, he has very good words to this topic. So yeah, I'm a little bit speechless that you really say that he doesn't talked about it after the Floyd stuff. So that's really not true. So, and your third question, I would like to answer something on your third question. Can you help me again? What was it?
It was about the handling of COVID.
Corona, okay. Yeah, as I told in the beginning, I think overall he did a good job. Nobody is perfect. It was an unexpected thing for everybody in the world. Nobody react perfect. Even not in Germany, although it's a very good situation here. I told you about the test. It was too slow and yeah, not enough in the beginning, but it changed very fast. But I don't see really a big mistake made by him or his administration. I think you should more look to New York, what the governor did there, when he put the cases in nurse homes or refused the lockdown in the beginning and said to the people, go out and buy and go shopping and all this stuff. So I think the mistakes were made there. Or in Louisiana, another state where the cases and death cases very high because of the carnival they had there. So it's more fault by governors, state by state, who did something wrong. But even most governors, the blue and the reds, most of them did a very good job in my opinion. So yeah, I don't see really something where you can say, oh, this was a total disaster or a big mistake. Or and Donald Trump acted very early. He acted in January, and he got called racist again by Joe Biden and the Democratic Party to close the borders for China. If he hadn't done that, we would talk about very different death numbers. And when he closed the border for Europe in the beginning of March, again, Democrats were talking about he destroying the friendship to Europe, and they talked about another impeachment. Come on. So he acted right away. Even Dr. Fauci said he did everything right on place. So yeah, I'm totally, yeah, I'm not really, I don't know. I think so it was the best he could do in this bad case. And maybe in 2 years we will see something different everywhere in every country. But in an unexpected, unknown situation like that, he did the best he could, in my opinion.
I just saw a news flash right now that Michael Caputo is taking a leave of absence from the Health and Human Services. So speaking of the best people, let me, Karen, before we get to your other question, just let's switch back to Annalie. Annalie, you had another question?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question coming back to the topic of climate change. So obviously, we spoke about withdrawal from the Paris agreements earlier, and with climate change, whether you believe it or not, we see that things are happening, and we can discuss about how quickly they're happening, but you can see damage, you see value at risk. And I feel like as a businessman, this is something that really Trump should not be ignoring, because it's definitely been proven that with climate change comes a lot of risk and opportunities, but there's really a lot of risk that needs to be considered. And this can actually pose, enormous future risks for companies who are in the oil business, for example, just based on the shifting demand, not even talking about climate change, but just the shifting demand that's coming from people who are looking to find other energy sources. So I'm wondering, just how you can completely ignore this fact.
I don't ignore it, but I don't see it a big issue like the left is doing, because we are talking about the same stuff like we did 20 years ago, when Al Gore said the world would go under if we do nothing. And yeah, nothing of that happened in this 20 years. You have small changes somewhere, but not really that ridiculous way like the left is telling us. And and I think you shouldn't make environment politics against the people. To take people with you, you must do it with them. And if you put it jobs against environment, or freedom against environment, yeah, some Democrats talking about that we should not fly anymore. So that's ridiculous. And and the US got energy independent under Donald Trump. So that should be something you should like too, I think. So, but I don't think we come together in this issue. We are probably very on different kind of poles on both sides. But that's all I can say.
That's right, Ben. We don't want. There's no time to try to convince anybody of other ideas.
No.
But the main thing is we want to hear your viewpoints.
Sure.
We appreciate your input. I would like to switch to Colin and Inga. Colin, you had a question?
Yeah, this is Colin. So,
Hi there.
hey, so my question is away from sort of specific policy. I went on my own political journey. I was raised in a Republican household, and George W. Bush actually drove me towards the LP. So just because I didn't like where I saw the Republican Party going. And for me anyway, I don't feel like it's necessarily gotten any better. So I'm kind of curious, like, because the Democrats are very sort of middle of the road progressive, I'm kind of curious what sort of drove you from the Democratic Party, and what specific things you saw appealing about the Republican Party instead.
Okay. I don't think they are in the middle. They are far, far left. If you take a look for the abortion issue, they want abortion till the birth date. Some Democrats even after it. That's ridiculous. If it comes down to guns, yeah, so, and even their economy policy is far, far left, especially what Mr. Biden is proposing. It's a complete switch.
Can you tell us how is it, what about their economic policy is far to the left?
So if you look for his tax plan, it would be the highest tax plans he had ever. So he would completely destroy all the economy success we had in the last 3.5 years. So took at the abortion issue, took at the gun issue. That's all far too left. And I was not a radical left when I was a Democrat. I was in the middle. So I was more a blue dog Democrat. Yeah, the party switched completely. If you compare it to Germany, they are not anymore the social democrats. They are more like the left party. And that's not my, of course, I'm not 100% agree every time with what some Republicans proposing, but they are not in power. So the far right or the Bush Republicans, I understand you totally that you left the party under Bush and go to the LP. I can totally understand that. But especially for a libertarian, I think President Trump is the first president since 40 years not to start a new war. If that is not something for you to come back, I don't know what is it. What should he deliver for you?
Well, I mean, the list is pretty long for me, but what specifically attracted you to the Republicans, though? Like what you've cited what drove you away from the Democrats, but why go to the Republicans? Like what in them did you see as far as a political future for the United States that was appealing?
At that time, it already started in the Republican Party to leave the Bush people behind and the evangelic voters and all this stuff. So the right-wing party become less important, and I hoped at that time that something like Donald Trump would come through. I was a big fan of Mitt Romney at that time, and I worked very hard for his campaign in Wisconsin. So I'm not of the right-wing Republicans, but I'm very happy that they are out now and out of power. And if you see that people the Democrats normally hate, look, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Pohl, the Bush clan, they are now welcomed by the Democrats. That's really ridiculous. And they go to the Democrats with a left policy. It's only about the hate against Trump, not about issues, in my opinion. And I feel very comfortable now in the Republican Party. The Trump Republican Party is very good, and I hope that after the Trump administration, we will go forward this way on the issues. Yeah, that's it.
Karen, you had a short question?
Yes, Mr. Wolfmeier, I'm wondering what areas you see have room for improvement with the Republicans, with their platform.
Oh, look, the Trump platform is very, very different to the platform of President Bush. So especially if you look at the trade stuff, so to take on China finally, to put on China, and so that would never happen under Bush, or probably even not under Mitt Romney. So that's a complete switch. Some call it populism. If it's populism, then I like it. But China was hurting the US very strong on jobs and the economy overall, or financially. So it was more over time to do something. And as Mr. Trump always said, it's not China's fault, it's the fault of the previous presidents not to take against it or to go against it. So I think here's a complete switch, especially the foreign policy is very, very different what we have seen the last 20 years with the Republican Party. So, yeah.
And Peter, you have a question.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I listened to an interview, maybe you've done as well, recently between John Bolton and Mr. Steingart, who's a very well-known German journalist. Mm-hmm. And obviously that was sort of following up on the publication of his book. Mm-hmm. And he declared that, first of all, the president gets up at noon, and before he does some telephone calls, but all meetings starts afternoon, and that his sole focus would be on re-election. And once he would be re-elected, there would be a significant chance or risk because there would be no further going on after his second term. So what are the chances, what are the risks of seeing Mr. Trump in a second term? Will he pull out of NATO? Will he declare war on Germany because of Nord Stream 2?
No.
What's your point on it?
He never said to leave the NATO. He only said that the other NATO states must pay their, have to pay. And even Obama said that in a different way.
I agree 100%, by the way.
Good. And I don't see a war against Germany, of course not. With Nord Stream 2, I don't know what will happen now after the Navalny stuff and all those things. We have to watch. But my guess is they will do the Nord Stream 2. So I think he will go further with the Middle East. I think the Palestinians are very under pressure now to find a new way with Israel after all what happens now. And I think Saudi Arabia will follow very soon the peace agreements. And so we have a big chance to find a good way there. And I hope that the talks with North Korea will have refound or restart. Depends a little bit, of course, of the situation in North Korea. Everybody or nobody knows really what's going on at the moment there, but I hope we have a restart there. And the talks between South and North Korea are going on, and that's a very good sign for the world. And for the US, I think the most important stuff will be another healthcare reform. We need that really, and we need a solution for the immigration stuff. I hope after the re-election it's possible to work together with the Democrats to find a solution for both sides. Okay, so we will see, and of course an infrastructure plan that will be very important too, and will be on the agenda. And first we must go back to the economy, back on track like it was before Corona. It's starting already, and if he's re-elected, we will go back, and I think we will much better as before. So that's what I see, what will happen after the re-election.
Well, in foreign policies, he has replaced a lot of multilateralism by unilateralism. And first and beforehand, not always to the disadvantage of the United States. That much I agree. But what is there to be expected? I mean, he's very critical of UNO, of the UN. He's very critical of basically every multilateral organization or body which is out there, to name Den Haag and others. So are we moving towards a world where we give up on multilateralism? By the way, it could be an advantage facing China, but that's another topic. What's your point on that?
Yeah, with China, it will be very difficult after what happened now with the Corona stuff. Before it, we were on a good way with the first agreement with China for trade, and they were working for the second trade agreement. I don't know how it will work now after all this happened. We will see. It depends a lot of China, how they will reacting in the future. I can see that neither. But the other stuff, yes, he's very critical of all these institutions. And I think most of them really need a reform. Especially the UNO needs a reform in itself. And the NATO should find out for themselves what they stand for, and but that doesn't mean to leave or to overthrow it, just to reform it. And it only can be a beginning. It will take a long time to do all the stuff. I don't think you can do all the stuff in 4 years, probably, but to start it, that's very important. And yeah, so what was the other question, or the other point you had, Peter?
Thank you anyways. My line is very bad here.
Okay.
I think it cut off there.
Okay.
Anyway, Ben, it's we've gone on nearly 50 minutes, so I think we should probably draw it here to a close. And maybe as a final question, you know, Ronald Reagan had that when he debated Jimmy Carter. He famously asked that question during the debate: "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" How would you answer this question?
I think most people will say before Corona came, they were. And I think most of the voters don't give it to Trump what happened with Corona. So, and you can see it in every poll that most voters expect him to be the guy to fix it again. He has a very good position against Biden when it comes down to the economy, and new polls show the issue become more and more important, and the COVID stuff get less. And of course, law and order will be another big important issue in the last weeks. But the main point will be the economy. And if somebody can do it again after he did it in 3 years, it's Donald Trump. It's definitely not Joe Biden. And yeah, that's how I see it.
Ben, thank you so much. Thanks for coming to the American Club of Hamburg and sharing your viewpoint.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's always before election time. Every major election, I always get a lot of calls, people looking for Republicans to hear the viewpoint. Thank you for joining us. We'll keep you in mind when we get some media calls coming up.
Okay.
Ben Wolfmeier, spokesperson for Republicans overseas Germany. And thank you so much for being here. Thanks for coming to the American Club. We have our next event will be on October 1st. We'll be at the Woodstock exhibition, a photo exhibition from a photographer that took 160 pictures there. And there's a beautiful homage to those times. And we will have also a sit-down dinner. Hope you can make it October 1st. Check us out, American Club. And everybody have a good evening and stay safe. Look forward to seeing you. Thanks again, Ben, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.